Ian Murray, re-elected as Labour MP for Edinburgh South, is now the party's only MP north of the border. Welcome, Ian Murray.
Good morning.
Is what I said just now right, that if Labour cannot revive in Scotland, Labour will probably be unable ever again to form a government in Westminster?
Well, I think it's one of the rules of British politics that a Labour government at UK level has to run through Scotland. But after the disaster of the election on the 12th of December, the Labour Party has to reconnect with all the nations and regions of the UK and all those seats that we lost, that we have held for generations. And that's one of the reasons I'm standing for Deputy Leader of the UK Party, because it sends out a strong message, not just to Scotland, that Scotland's important to the UK Labour Party, but all the nations and regions are important to the UK Labour Party.
You have been a very vocal critic of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, but the problems in Scotland long predate that. Back in 2010, I think 51 Labour MPs in Scotland, 41 Labour MPs out of the total, and now just one. It's been a really long decline. When I started in journalism, Scottish Labour provided not just a big tranche of MPs, Scotland felt like a Labour fiefdom almost, but also lots and lots of the nationally known leaders, you know, John Smith, Robin Cook, Donald Dewar and all the rest of it. Something profound has gone wrong in Scottish Labour.
Well, I think that's your argument for having a Scot at the top of the UK Labour Party again, because we have had those titans in the past that have made the case for Scotland in the United Kingdom. But one of the key things that I think we need to examine here is that what has actually happened, and what is clear on big constitutional issues like independence and indeed what we're seeing with Brexit, is if the Labour Party doesn't stand by its values and stick by its principles and take a side, then standing in the middle of the road means you get hits by both sides. So we have to be principled. We're principally against independence, but let's make the positive case for the United Kingdom. Let's make the case of why independence is bad, and let's try and say to the public, not just in Scotland but across the United Kingdom, that our UK actually matters.
So for progressive-minded Scots, or Scots on the centre left at least, who are looking and scratching their heads at Boris Johnson's government, how would you make the case for the United Kingdom?
Well, that's exactly what I'm standing for, Deputy Leader, and I've been making the case to the Labour Party membership and in the hustings yesterday that it's incredibly important to look at what's happened in Scotland, and the legacy that have been left of an 80-seat Conservative majority means that we have to take the path of a credible alternative Labour government and not a party of opposition. If Scots can see that we can get into a position of delivering a UK Labour government with progressive values and Labour Party values, which are still the values of Scotland incidentally, then they will vote for that party because they know that there's a chance of Labour getting into power. I think one of the lessons of the 2019 general election, not just in Scotland but across the rest of the UK, is the public didn't see the Labour Party as being credible. Now we have to talk to those communities again, and that's one of the major planks of my proposals to be Deputy Leader of the party.
Do you think Scotland needs a new leader?
Well, I think the UK Labour Party needs a new leader. The Scottish Party will have a new deputy leader, but Richard Leonard in Scotland had a real opportunity to wipe the slate clean, to start again. He responded in June when the public said they didn't like our position on Brexit, and he came out very strongly to stay. But what I want to do as deputy leader is to start that conversation, to start a campaign for what British future looks like in terms of not just our relationship with the nations and regions, but also in terms of Europe and what we do next.
It feels as if we're at a moment where the whole constitutional settlement is being shaken at least a bit. The House of Lords, as we've said, may go to the north of England and so on. In that context, what about a federal Britain in which the House of Commons becomes, in effect, the English Parliament?
Well, in 1997, the Labour government then decided to take devolution to its next step, which is why we ended up with the Welsh Assembly, the Scottish Parliament and devolution across England. But I think we need to be really sensible and serious about that now. So I want to set up the Labour Party campaign for Britain's future, which will look at not just galvanising the public towards how they are governed, both at national and regional level in England, as well as everywhere else, but also what our future relationship is with Europe, and that's an incredibly important task for the Labour movement. Is
that a yes or a no on the possibility for federal Britain?
Well, I think it's up to the public to decide, but I think it's up to the Labour Party as an opposition to take that forward. So and if we end up with a federal Britain, then we end up with a federal Britain. But the key task for this year...
Would you put that to a referendum?
Well, that's a topic that would have to come. That would
Yeah.
have to be a topic that comes later. But the work has to be done first. And as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, I want to do that work, not just about how all the nations and regions of the UK govern themselves in the future in a post-Brexit Britain, but where the Labour Party sits with a relationship with Europe in terms of jobs and security, and indeed, if required, going back into the European Union as a member of the European Union.
Do you think when it comes to the party there should be a federal split? In other words, an independent or semi-independent Scottish Labour Party, a sister party of the Labour Party in England, but not the same party?
Well, absolutely no. I think we're a UK party, and I think we have to act as a UK party, but what I would do is make sure that the parties have all the autonomy they require. The Scottish Labour Party actually has more autonomy than any other part of the UK Labour Party, but it isn't used. Let's use that autonomy, and that takes away any issues around becoming a separate party. But the regional offices in England and the Welsh Assembly General Secretaries and the Scottish General Secretary need the powers and the ability to make those decisions locally, because never again should we go into a general election where it's run by London and others around the country are screaming out for resources and targeting where they're requiring it. We shouldn't be having seats lost by several hundred when there's thousands of activists and seats that we'll never win.
Let me ask you about one controversy at the moment, which is what Lisa Nandy said. And when I look at what she said, it seems to me that what she was saying was not that the British government should behave like the Spanish government, but that there was a kind of progressive agenda there that could turn nationalism away. She says we could look outwards to other countries and other parts of the world where they've had to deal with divisive nationalism and seek to discover the lessons where, in these brief moments of history, in places like Catalonia and Quebec, we have managed to go and beat narrow, divisive nationalism with a social justice agenda. In essence, do you agree with her?
Absolutely agree with her, and it's been spun out of control in terms of what Lisa Nandy said, and it goes back to your very first question. The way to defeat nationalism in this country and to keep our UK together, because our UK matters, is to have a progressive centre-left Labour government at Westminster. That's what I'll be fighting for. The Labour Party needs to change to be able to do that, but the most important thing is to have a Labour Prime Minister walking through the door of number 10, and that will defeat nationalism in Scotland. I'm very confident of that, because people are crying out for a progressive government, they're crying out to have a stake in society, and they're crying out for the Labour Party to be their voice. That's what people were telling us on the doorstep, and that's what we need to deliver.
Ian Murray, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.